Hey, Sean, I recently finished a journal. Now, I've made videos about journaling and talked about its importance, but I don't actually journal that frequently, and sometimes I go months without journaling. Sometimes I journal every day, and this journal I have filled every single page of, and it started on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017, and finished on Saturday, June 13th, last weekend. I filled the last page. And as I was reading through it, there's some really, really cool stuff in here. Like this journal took me, started in St. Louis, it went to Denver, to Park City, to Burkina Faso in Africa, it went to Michigan, Florida, and Amsterdam, and there's a ton of cool stories and reflection on some pivotal moments and some real growth in this journal. But as I went back through, there was one theme that emerged, and as dramatic as this sounds, the theme was I hated myself. And in spite of the cool places that I went and the cool things that I did, every entry was about changing something, was about working on something, being different, getting closer to some distant thing. But everything was about not being who I want to be and addressing some of the metrics on how I measure who I want to be and how I'm coming up short and maybe how I can sort of pursue that. But it sort of bummed me out that this is, almost 3 years of my life, and the main takeaways have been how I've wanted them to be different. And insofar as literally what I write at the end of every single entry is the word showtime, like let's go, let's get going. And at first it started as a motivation thing, but that was my mentality every time. Of like, okay, I've written, I've reflected, let's go, let's do something, let's change it, let's progress. And as I'm starting my next journal, it's a blank journal, and I've only filled the first 2 pages now, but it put me in this place where I want to be aware of what the theme of this journal is going to be before I live however many years of my life will be captured in these pages. Because looking back, yeah, the past 3 years have been incredible, but I've been constantly searching, constantly looking for what's next. And even when I do accomplish something, I'm wondering, how do I spin that into more? How do I change that? How do I build on that? And it all comes down to I hate myself. I hated myself. And I have this opportunity to shift a little bit. And I think it's catalyzed by the reflection that we're all experiencing during the pandemic. But really the root of it is looking back on what I've literally written down about what I think about myself. And it all comes from a place of disappointment. And so there's no shortage of things that I've disliked about myself. And these aren't unique to me, but I can look at my business successes and look at my yearly revenue that Boom makes, and there is absolutely room for that to grow. And I can compare myself to other people around me who make more money than I do, or do different projects that I might think are more fun, or projects that I might think are more creative and therefore more exciting, and to share them with people, as where I can look at some of my projects and be like, yeah, this was just another one of these. And there's a reason to get down on myself for that. My weight has been a huge point of anxiety and disappointment for myself, and especially as my time has sort of disappeared as Boom got busier, and I have a son now, and the ability to make even more excuses. I've hidden behind that, and like I look at pictures of myself and I look at videos of myself, and I hate it, and I get upset with how I look, and I think that people are judging me, and there's clothes that I don't wear, there's pictures that I don't take of myself, there's places that I go and I will take a picture of other people and not be in it because I won't want to look at myself later, and I know that. And that's not a good place to be, and that's absolutely been what my past 3 years have been about, is like trying to shape myself to something different, trying to be something different, and focusing so much on the fact that I'm not. And I think goals are important and progress is important, but instead of having these small measurable goals that can be accomplishments that you can check off and look at and be proud of, I'm focusing on some nebulous, unattainable goal of I want to be this kind of person. And if I compare myself even to another filmmaker or creative or dad, or put in any role there and picture someone. Picture, if you're watching YouTube, maybe you like Casey Neistat and you say, I want to be as good as Casey Neistat. But the problem with that is if you aim for that, even if you make it there, by the time you make it there, Casey Neistat has changed. The rules have changed. The world has changed. And you're just constantly going to be set up for disappointment. And that's what I kept doing. I kept creating these imaginary, poorly defined ideas of what successful, happy Sean looked like. And I always fell short. I was always too heavy, not financially successful enough, not creatively successful enough, not a good enough dad or husband or son or brother or friend. And I let all of that bring me down. And what I realized as I looked back on some of these things, and this helped sort of shift everything to where it needs to be for the future. But the first big takeaway is this: everything in my life that has been bad has turned out to be very good. And I think of times when things were as difficult as I could have possibly imagined. And in the moment, I was not sure if I could survive. And I think of things like, obviously, the first few months of fatherhood when no one's sleeping, when it's just screaming and you don't know what to do. There's moments like that I think a lot of people have. But then there's also things like when I went to Burkina Faso in Africa and my anxiety was acting up. I couldn't eat. I was worried about getting food poisoning. There were people who did get food poisoning from these same places and things. And there's threats of terrorism and being hunted for what we were doing. And that all went into my head, and it was a very, very difficult moment. And I look back on that and I say, I survived, and I'm better for it because of that. And I can think of other things that I've gone through with different organizations that I've been a part of, and when things look like they've fallen apart, or when jobs look like they've fallen through, or I really needed something to work for the business and it didn't happen. I think back, it's so much better that I didn't do that. And like one of the first examples, toward the end of college, I applied for Teach for America, and I got I was in the last interview before they say okay. I had to go in the Willis Tower and do my interview and give my lesson on all this stuff, and I was so ready to be a biology teacher, and I didn't get selected. And I look back on that and I say, thank God I didn't get selected, and thank God I ended up having to go work at Dierberg's in the deli at the grocery store in St. Louis, and worked there for a few months until CNN popped on the radar, and I ended up getting to work there, and then getting to work in film there, and then that transitioned into what I had wanted to do, which was production and things like that, and I got to build my company around that. And so there's moments that have seemed so bad, and that have seemed like they're bad because I wasn't good enough, that have always turned out to be something that has positively impacted me once I'm beyond it. And there's a few things I can think of lately, that some of which I won't share, that have been unimaginable burdens for me. And as I in the moment, I'm like, well, this is it. This is the end of my company, of my life. I will never move past this. And 2-3 days go by, and it's like, you know what? Wow, I learned a lot from that. I'm stronger because of it, and I know how to shape myself for what's coming next. And it's that reframing of things that I'm using to help myself get to the place where the theme for this journal is this simple: I truly love myself. And it sounds cliche and it sounds new agey, but as I think about it, picture if you're someone who struggles, as you probably do because we all do, if you're someone who struggles with what you look like, where you are with your career, with your education, with your relationships, you're probably thinking of things that you could do better, things that you wish you were further along with or something. But take yourself out of your shoes for just a moment and think of any conversation that you've had with anyone else. Picture your friends. For me, it's friends on my Frisbee team, or my brothers, or my parents, or Jesse, or anyone, any of the young filmmakers that I talk to, or older filmmakers that I work with who are mentors to me. There would not be a single person that I would think should be unhappy. I look at all these people, I'm like, you're right where you need to be. And if you're wasting time feeling inadequate or feeling like you're not good enough, you are doing just that. You are wasting time. And I would, plead with anyone who was struggling. If anyone came and talked to me about this, I would beg them to realize their value in the things that they've accomplished already this far to get to where they are, and the fact that they're thinking about things and they have that mental capacity to do this analysis and this reflection, and how much further that puts you ahead. And you should be so proud of that. And I can picture myself having that conversation with anyone, and I do have that conversation with a lot of people. I just never have it with myself. And I think as a father right now, today is Father's Day as I'm recording this, whether it gets posted today or not, I think of my father. Jesse and I just watched this documentary last night called Dads on Apple TV Plus, and it's a story, several stories of dads and their experiences and how the role of a dad is changing. But several people talked about their own fathers and like what their fathers did for them, some good, some bad. At the end of it, it's one of these things when you hear things framed like talking about your father, in the past tense, and some of these people whose fathers have passed on, they say things like, he was such a good dad. He always, provided for us and stuff like that. And that's important, but it's in that same voice, that same documentary interview voice that I picture someone saying like, dad was always there, but he was a really unhappy guy. He really struggled. He didn't, he wasn't happy in his job, and he did what he did to get by, but he lived his whole life always wanting something more and never getting it and never realizing what that was. And as I picture this theoretical interview, I hope to God that my dad is happy. Hi, Dad, if you're watching this. I hope that you're happy and you're proud of who you are and what you've given to your 3 sons and your wife and your company and the community because of that. There's nothing, I cannot imagine something that you could be disappointed about in yourself and what you've done. And knowing that you probably do have some insecurities like we all do, I flip that on myself. And as I come up with this list of things that are wrong with me and that I could fix, I miss that little piece of if somebody found out like, oh yeah, Sean, I got to work with him and then that led to other opportunities of this and that, or I watched one of his videos and, it helped me rethink some things and I was happy, or, I tried something that I hadn't tried before. And especially one day when Luke is older and he looks back on our relationship, I would hate for him to be in a place where he's like, yeah, my dad was always there for me. He was always around, but he didn't really like himself. He was always searching for what was next. He was never happy in the moment. He was always yearning, pining for something that he couldn't even define, let alone achieve or obtain. And so it's that perspective that clicks for me. And I realized that the things that I've been upset about with my appearance, with my station in my career and things like that, if I waste time being unhappy, I'm doing a disservice to myself. I'm doing a disservice to my wife. I'm doing a disservice to my son and my family and my colleagues. And think about it, if anyone you knew that you were close to, that you cared about, that you worked with, if you're like, oh man, I found out that this person has just hated themselves and they constantly wanting something that they don't know what it is, it would break your heart. And that's what so many of us are doing to ourselves. Not especially me, but that's where I'm at right now. And I think of the pictures that I've opted out of because I wouldn't like the way that I looked in them. And I think, one day if my son looks back and there's not a lot of photos of us together because I, didn't want to be in them because I thought I looked fat, my son I would never look at a photo of my dad from when I was a kid and be like, oh, look at this picture of me and my dad. Dad's kind of heavy in this picture, though. I kind of wish Dad were a little trimmer. And the fact that I would never say that, no one would ever say that. makes me have to tell it to myself and say, well, no one's going to say that. So I shouldn't say that. I should just live my life. And if there's days that there's been days where, we go swimming and I don't go in because I don't want to take my shirt off. And what a dumb way to live life, where you're passing up opportunities because of an insecurity that nobody cares about except yourself. And I've been doing this to myself for at least 3 years of documented examples. But it's time to flip that switch and to be the best dad, to be the best husband and son and brother and colleague that I can be. I have to really, really like myself. And when I stop and look back, I've done some awesome things and I've accomplished some amazing things. And while there's room to do more, there's always room to do more. I've made The Marshmallow Lesson, which was my first short film, and I had so much support from that. And that was just as one tiny example of all these people coming together to help me with something, which is itself a testimony of the life that I've lived, that people were willing to dedicate themselves to my project. And that means so much. And that's one tiny example. And I can look back on the places I've traveled and the people I've gotten to meet and talk to. And there's been so much that I've done that I sometimes lose sight of it. And I need to step back and say, look at what I've done. I should be really, really proud of who I am. And while there's always the potential to change and to better yourself, focusing on the fact that you're not those things yet is not the way for me to move forward in a way where I can be the best dad I can be and the best husband, friend, son, brother, colleague, whatever. It starts with you truly have to love yourself. And I encourage you to find that and to forgive yourself if you're coming up with a list of things that you haven't done yet, that you look around and you see other people are doing. There's people younger than you who are further along than you are with what you want to do. That's okay. If you can wake up every day and be grateful for what you have, it sounds so cliche. It really, really does, but it's so true. Look back on a week of being grateful and present and savoring your interactions every day and the things around you. And look back on that week at the end of it and say, was this a better week than a week where I was just focused on what was left undone, where the holes were, where the voids were? And so for me, my action steps moving forward are only two things. I'm going to try to reframe a lot of the negativity as opportunities or as homages to things in the past. And for me, my weight is a struggle and my appearance. And you can look at my YouTube videos and see how I've changed over the past few years. But with the weight gain, the spin there is I've eaten a ton of amazing food, probably more than I should have in some situations, but trying to understand the breakfasts and the treats and the moments where we've gotten ice cream, and this sounds ridiculous as I list it out, but there's been so many happy little memories associated with that my current body is an homage to where my time has been spent in the past few years, and there's been a lot of happiness in there. And if I choose to focus on the negativity, I'm making it would have been in vain to have enjoyed all of those moments and all those times where I tried food that I could have eaten lean proteins and nothing that night, but instead I had a memory and I went out and I ate amazing food with an amazing chef at an amazing restaurant and stuff like that. So reframing those things is the big part of it. But the second part is reflecting on it and making sure that not only am I in the moment sort of pausing to check myself and correct myself, but I'm also at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, taking the time to write down those things so that I can look back and the more you write, the more you start to reframe your own thoughts and solidify some opinions. And so hopefully in a few months or years or when this journal fills up, I can look back on that period of time and say, I love the days that I got to live in there, the problems I was privileged enough to endure, the drama that we as humans are capable of experiencing. All that stuff is a blessing. And if you lose sight of it, you're only going to be more unhappy than you should have been all along. So that's what I'm working on moving forward. And I've been excited to make this video because I've been sort of leading up to this in my head for a while, and I wasn't ready to make it until today. And some of my last few videos have pushed me here, and there's other things I want to make, and I want to make gear videos and some of the stuff that I've made before and things like that. I want to play music more, even though I don't think my voice is perfect. There's a lot that I want to do, and I wanted to put this video in place as sort of an anchor for everything else that can be attached to this moving forward, because if you find that happiness and you can truly root it in your heart and in your brain, then regardless of what happens in your relationships, in your job, in your life, you're going to have a pretty good one, and you're going to be able to look back, and the people who know you are going to be able to look back and be happy that they knew you and happy that they were a part of your story. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.